Honored to be joined by Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. Sheriff, it's good to have you here in the NRA News Studios.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot.
Of course, you're here in Washington for National Police Week. Talk about the activity so far and talk about what National Police Week means to you.
Well, this means a lot to everybody who puts this uniform on every day and goes out and puts their best foot forward to serve their communities and make them a safer place. This week is really about honoring those who have given their lives in service to their community. We ask a lot of our law enforcement officers, and we need to take some time out every day, but specifically 1 week a year during Police Week to get together with the families and other survivors, cops from all across the country. I say cops affectionately. I'm a career cop myself. And just remember, what others have done to ensure freedom, to ensure safer neighborhoods. And the camaraderie is unbelievable. It's therapeutic, really, for those that realize who knows if you're going to make it through a career without your name being added to that wall.
Two men were added to that wall, LaCorey Tate and Benjamin Dean from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, over the weekend in a tragic fashion. And the mayor came out and blamed the gun laws that contributed to the deaths of these officers. First of all, talk about the officers' deaths and talk about the politicization of the gun laws causing a man to actually shoot and kill a cop.
Well, it's unfortunate, I think, that the mayor of Hattiesburg went the political route on a tragic situation. It's that two of Hattiesburg's finest put their lives on the line and cost them dearly. The community is at a loss. Everybody's suffering, and I just think it's beneath anybody to come and politicize and seize on the anti-gun movement, on the deaths of two of Hattiesburg's police officers. I've been doing this a long time, 37 years. The gun is not the problem. Weak prosecution is really at the heart of it. You can look at things like father-absent homes, all right, young men growing up without any mentoring or role modeling and not having values instilled in them, and then they engage in abhorrent behavior like taking property and lives at gunpoint. But it's the behavior really that's the problem. All these kids growing up, like I said, without some sort of male role modeling. It's not the gun. I mean, more people in the United States own guns that would never use it against another human being other than in defense of their own life. So I think it's pathetic. I think it's sad. I just hate to see that. If we really want to make improvements in the safety in these neighborhoods, then we have to take the laws that we have and send a different message to the criminal element that there's going to be consequences for your behavior. We have to have better social policies that help strengthen families, put families back together, help people find meaningful work, better schools for our kids so that they can grow up and reach their God-given potential. The last thing I'm going to do is point to the gun as the cause of any of this or any of the gun laws, because like I said, millions of people own guns in the United States and know what to do with those firearms, and like I said, would never use that against another human being to settle a dispute or to take property.
The other day in Madison, in your home state, there was a police-involved shooting, and the officer was cleared. His name was Tony Robinson, who was shot. He immediately became a hashtag. Everyone went, crazy, screaming about that. Why don't people go crazy and scream about the name of LaCorey Tate or Benjamin Dean? Why are the Tony Robinsons the ones that people scream about? Why aren't more people, even on our side, screaming more about the deaths of police officers?
Well, let's look at who the biggest windbags are, if you will. They're anarchists, they're cop haters by nature. And, there was a time in this country where the civil rights movement had icons, people like Frederick Douglass, the abolitionists, people like Rosa Parks, who, stood up in defiance of some very distasteful laws here in the United States. People like Dr. Martin Luther King, who paid with his life to try to straighten this country out in terms of social policy. And now we're left with, and I think it's because things have gotten so much better that now the civil rights movement is left scrambling and using people like Mike Brown, people like Tony Robinson, people like Eric Garner, who are common criminals. Okay, the man in Madison, Wisconsin, which is right up the road from me, And I'm not suggesting that it should have cost him his life, but he contributed to what happened to him, and he bears some of the responsibility as well. But he's a convicted felon, okay? Mike Brown, and tried to disarm a police officer. Eric Garner resisted arrest. And so I look at their behavior, and had they done things a little differently, Rosa Parks, when she defied what the law was, when the police placed her under arrest, she basically went to jail. And she didn't lose her life as a result of it. So, I look at those things, but I think that the fact that they have to hold up common criminals as icons of the civil rights movement really means to me that we've come a long way, and this stuff is there's only episodes now of racism and discrimination. It's not institutional like Barack Obama claims. Shame on him. I mean, he became the president of the United States. If racism was institutional in the United States, he wouldn't be sitting in the White House today.
Let's talk about what happened in New York yesterday. There was a hammer-wielding assailant, goes after a female cop. A male cop shoots him. Of course, his name becomes a hashtag, and all these people are like, why can't we shoot him in the knee? Why do we have to, why can't we take him down? Can you talk about, people who second-guess the police and say, well, why can't you just shoot him in the leg? Why can't you disable him? Talk about people who think like that.
Sure. Well, people have no understanding of what this, and I don't expect them to. All right, I've been doing this for 37 years, and things happen real fast, all right? These decisions are split-second decisions. The United States Supreme Court understands that in the cases they've dealt with, the police use of force. And you have to give the benefit of the doubt to the cop. There should be a thorough investigation when these things happen. But see, and you mentioned it with the police officers. Why don't we, celebrate the police officers and know about the police officers' names? Because it doesn't fit that false narrative that's out there about the American police officer. You have people who ask those questions, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that, who've never done this work. And whenever I hear that, I say, I'll tell you what, come on out here. We're always looking for help. See what it's like. All right, walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in the shoes of the American police officer who goes into these crime-ravaged areas where young men at a younger and younger age, more violent, more angry, and will easily, in defiance of our laws, by the way, arm themselves and then turn it not only on their fellow citizens but on a law enforcement officer at the drop of a hat. You look at yesterday, you mentioned in New York was a hammer wielding. What are we going to call for, banning hammers? I mean, that's how ridiculous that is, to blame the instrument. I will never blame the instrument. I blame the behavior. But this is just a rough period of time for the American police officer, not because of us, but because we're under attack by people who have a self-serving agenda. And it's not agenda for freedom. It's not an agenda for the law-abiding citizen. It's not an agenda for safer neighborhoods. It's a socialist agenda. I'm going to be real honest about that. But I'm out here to defend the honor, the distinction, the character, the courage, the integrity of the American police officer, because that's really who we are. All right, life's not perfect. All right, I wish we could slow things down in these situations and take the time like the second guessers do, the backbenchers, the people who sit on the couch after the thing happens and start questioning what we do. And it's okay to ask these questions, but not in an accusatory way of they could have. It's just, why did they do what they did, which is a legitimate question, instead of they should have, because they have no idea what these things are like in real time.
We're seeing reports that attacks on cops are at record levels, and I've seen you and I actually talk a lot on Twitter, and I've seen you tweet a lot about who you blame for this, straight from the top. Talk about that.
Well, I don't really look in terms of blame. I look at this anti-cop sentiment, rhetoric that's out there that's being fueled by some very powerful people in the United States, led by none other than President Barack Obama, who had a chance early on after Ferguson to diffuse this thing and remind people that behavior matters. And he had a chance to remind young black men in the United States as a role model, because that's what he is, about their behavior, and that they need to respect authority, and that if we really want to reduce these deadly encounters with police officers, then we have to remind the perpetrator to stop trying to disarm the police, stop fighting the police, stop fleeing from the police, because when you engage in those behaviors, which are very dangerous for the police officer, mind you, which is why in some of these situations, officers feel that they have to use deadly force as a response. But I like what Thomas Sowell, author. He's with the Hoover Institute right now. Brilliant mind. Said in these encounters, when he said if force has to be used by the law enforcement officer, he says let the blame be on the person who forced that situation. Okay, who made that officer have to use that force. And that's a different way of looking at it, but we're not hearing that from some powerful people in the United States right now. Mayor Bill de Blasio the same way. They're fueling this anti-cop sentiment. I don't blame them for the deaths of any law enforcement officer. I blame the perpetrator, but at the same time, when I see this statistic that cop killings in the last year are up 90%, can you imagine if anything was up 90% in a negative way, what the reaction of this country would be? I mean, it'd be outrage. And instead, the cop haters, the anarchists, seize on these opportunities and then try to flip it around. But, and I trust the American people. I really do. I trust them to see through this. This is being aided by the liberal mainstream media who are carrying this false narrative. If it weren't for them, nobody would be hearing this nonsense. And we wouldn't be at the level that we're at today with all this dissension in America. I think that this divide and conquer that's been used by the President of the United States has been very destructive. He's another one that seized on Sandy Hook and some of these other tragic situations where instead of talking to the nation in a calm fashion to try to help people get through these very difficult periods of time, he seizes on them for political expediency. And I find that just highly distasteful.
Last question, here in Washington from around the country. I mean, I've saw stories, cops coming on bicycles, on motorcycles from everywhere. You talk to a lot of them. Can you give us maybe your favorite story or your best experience so far here at National Police Week?
Well, last night I was at the Candlelight Vigil and kind of have this recognizable face now with some of the national stage. And it's just a platform to defend the American police officer. But the favorite part of it is cops from all across the nation come up in a very sincere way to say, thanks for being our voice. Thanks for defending us. Thanks for sticking up for us because nobody else is. So there's this real despair, as cops watch themselves get beat up from a PR perspective. Like I said, they have their character, their honor, their integrity, their service denigrated by some very powerful people in the United States. We're used to that from the general public, and I don't, because it's a small percentage when I say general public, we kind of expect that and we accept that, people to be critical. But when it's coming from the political class, that really hurts.
Sheriff Clarke, thank you for being here in town. Thanks for all you do for your fellow police officers. Thanks for your time on NRA News.
It's a pleasure to serve, and thank God for the NRA.